In the hustle and bustle of life, it's easy to become overwhelmed by the weight of our worries. We find ourselves consumed by the uncertainties of the future, the challenges of the present, and the regrets of the past. But let me tell you something, you don't have to carry that burden alone. There's a way to find peace amidst the chaos, to trust in a higher purpose, and to let go of the anxiety that holds you back. Imagine for a moment that you're standing at the edge of a vast ocean. The waves crash against the shore, relentless and powerful. The tide pulls at your feet, threatening to drag you under. But then, you notice something remarkable. A ship appears on the horizon, its sails billowing in the wind, its course steady and true. As it draws closer, you realize that this ship is not just a vessel. It's a symbol of guidance, of purpose, of a path forward. In life, we are often like that person standing on the shore, facing the tumultuous sea of our worries and fears. But just as the ship offers a way forward, so too does a higher purpose provide direction amidst the storm. When we stop trying to control every aspect of our lives and instead trust in this greater purpose, we find a sense of peace and clarity that transcends our circumstances. But how do we begin to trust? How do we let go of the need to control and allow ourselves to be led? It starts with a simple yet profound shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on what we can't control, we focus on what we can, our thoughts, our actions, our attitudes. We choose to believe that there is a plan for our lives, a purpose that is unfolding, even if we can't see it yet. This doesn't mean that life will be without challenges, far from it, but it does mean that we don't have to face those challenges alone. We can face them with the confidence that we are not abandoned, that we are not adrift without a compass. We are being guided even when the path is unclear. Trusting in this higher purpose requires faith, the faith to believe that there is a reason for everything, even the hardships we endure. It requires the courage to let go of our need for certainty and embrace the unknown. It means surrendering our worries and anxieties, not because we are giving up, but because we are choosing to believe that there is a greater plan at work. And here's the beauty of it. When we let go of our worries and trust in this higher purpose, we find that we are not only guided, but transformed. Our fears give way to hope, our doubts to faith, our anxieties to peace. We begin to see the world through a different lens, one that reveals opportunities where we once saw obstacles, solutions where we once saw problems, and blessings where we once saw burdens. So I urge you today, stop worrying. Let go of the need to control every aspect of your life. Trust in the higher purpose that is guiding you, even when the way forward isn't clear. Believe that there is a plan for your life, a purpose that is unfolding, and that you are exactly where you need to be. Embrace the peace that comes from surrender, the freedom that comes from trust, and the joy that comes from knowing you are not alone. Remember, the ship is on the horizon, and it is coming toward you. All you have to do is let go of the shore and set sail. The journey may not always be easy, but it will always be worth it. Trust in the voyage and let it lead you to the life you were meant to live. American rhetoric in the fast-paced, pressure-filled world we live in, there's an ever-present urge to grasp for control. We try to manage everything, our future, our finances, our relationships, our health, even the unpredictable circumstances that come knocking without invitation. Control feels safe. It feels like if we can just hold tightly enough, plan deeply enough, organize perfectly enough, we can avoid the pain, dodge the hardship, and steer life where we want it to go. But here's the hard truth: control is an illusion. And when we finally come to realize that, something powerful begins to happen deep within us. Letting go of control is not the same as giving up. It is not weakness, and it is not passivity. It is one of the most courageous things a person can do. Because to let go of control is to say, I acknowledge I am not the master of everything. It is to admit that our own strength has limits and that our vision of the future is incomplete. That admission isn't a defeat, it's the beginning of wisdom. The longer we cling to the illusion that we can handle it all, the more worn down we become. We grow weary, we grow anxious, we grow fearful, because we're trying to carry a burden we were never designed to bear alone. When you walk through your days with clenched fists, with that constant need to predict, protect, and perform, you may feel like you're being responsible, but in truth, you're imprisoning yourself. You see, control is a heavy chain. It tightens with every unexpected turn life takes. And life will take those turns. No matter how carefully we plan, things fall apart. Opportunities vanish, people change, doors close. And if we have built our peace upon the shaky foundation of I must manage everything, then that peace will crumble the moment our plans go sideways. But letting go, truly letting go, begins with understanding that the weight of the world was never meant to rest on your shoulders. You weren't created to bear every burden, solve every problem, or anticipate every outcome. There is a freedom that comes when you lay down the illusion of control and open your hands to the possibility that something greater is at work. This is not about fatalism, and it's not about carelessness. It's about walking in trust instead of fear. We often think that if we loosen our grip, everything will fall apart. But what if that's the lie we've believed? What if the truth is that by loosening our grip, we actually make room for growth, for wisdom, for guidance that surpasses our own understanding? What if the very things we've been striving so hard to orchestrate would unfold more beautifully if we stopped trying to micromanage them? Letting go of control means being okay with not having all the answers. It means learning to breathe in the unknown without panic. It means being honest about the fact that we don't know what tomorrow holds, and learning to live with that uncertainty in peace instead of fear. That kind of peace is not something the world can give, and it certainly doesn't come from meticulous planning. It comes from surrender, from saying, even if I don't know what's ahead, I trust that I'll be guided through it. The moment you let go of control, you begin to live with a different kind of strength, a strength that doesn't come from certainty but from faith. You'll begin to see that some of the best moments in life happened when you weren't steering. Some of the greatest breakthroughs came not when you were striving, but when you were still. Some of the deepest lessons were born not in the safety of control, but in the surrender to the unknown. And isn't it true that when we look back at our lives, many of the moments we tried hardest to control were the ones that drained us the most? We spent sleepless nights worrying about decisions that, in the end, worked out without our help. We wasted energy trying to manipulate situations that never belonged to us in the first place. We chased outcomes that were never meant to be ours, and all the while, peace was waiting, not in having everything figured out, but in the quiet decision to let go. Letting go also means releasing other people. We try to fix them, change them, control their choices, manage their emotions. But people are not projects. They're not problems to be solved or systems to be reprogrammed. They're human beings with their own journeys, and our attempts to control them only create tension and distance. True love, true connection, grows in the soil of freedom. When we stop controlling others, we start loving them better. And perhaps hardest of all, letting go of control means releasing the past. So many of us are haunted by what we could have done differently. We replay conversations, regret decisions, mourn missed chances. But the past is fixed. We can learn from it, but we can't alter it. The moment we stop trying to rewrite our personal history and instead embrace its lessons, we free ourselves from its chains. We let go. And in letting go, we move forward. This kind of surrender is not a one-time decision. It's a daily, even moment-by-moment choice. You may feel like you've let go, and then something triggers you, a crisis, a change, a fear, and you reach again for control. That's okay. What matters is that you recognize it, release it again, and keep choosing trust. Keep choosing peace. Keep choosing the open hands over the clenched fists, because in the end, control never really gave us peace. It only gave us the illusion of it, a shallow, fragile peace that cracked the moment life didn't go our way. Real peace, the kind that sustains you through every storm, that kind of peace only comes when you stop trying to steer the ship in every direction and instead trust that you are not adrift. You are being led, and the one leading you knows the waters far better than you do. Trust in a higher purpose doesn't come naturally to most of us. We live in a world that teaches us to rely on ourselves, to chart our own path, to hustle and grind until we make things happen. We're told that if we want something done right, we have to do it ourselves. We're encouraged to always have a backup plan, to calculate every move, to protect ourselves from disappointment by managing our expectations. But there comes a point where all the planning, all the strategy, all the self-reliance leaves us tired and empty. It's in that moment, when we reach the end of our own strength, that the possibility of a higher purpose starts to whisper to our hearts. We look at our lives and we see a mess of circumstances that don't always make sense. The losses, the delays, the disappointments, the doors that slammed shut just when we thought we were about to walk through them. The people who left when we thought they'd stay, the plans that unraveled right before our eyes. If we don't believe there's a bigger picture, if we don't believe that any of it has meaning, then we're left with despair. But if we begin to trust that there's a reason, a purpose behind it all, even when we can't see it yet, something begins to change inside of us. The confusion doesn't disappear, but the panic starts to fade. The fear begins to loosen its grip. There's something freeing about saying, I don't know why this happened, but I trust that it's part of something greater. That's not denial. That's not blind optimism. That's choosing to believe that there's more going on than what we can see with our eyes. It's choosing to believe that our lives are not random, that we are not walking through the world by accident, and that the pain we endure isn't wasted. It's a declaration of trust, even in the middle of the storm. When we begin to trust in a higher purpose, we stop obsessing over outcomes. We stop needing everything to go our way in order to feel secure. We start to walk in a new kind of peace, one that doesn't depend on perfect conditions. We learn to say, I don't understand this right now, but I believe it's part of something good. And that kind of belief changes how we live. It changes how we love, how we forgive, how we persevere. It makes us resilient, not because life gets easier, but because our faith becomes deeper. And it's important to say this, trusting in a higher purpose doesn't mean everything in your life will feel good. It doesn't mean that everything will go smoothly or that pain will vanish. It means that even the hardest seasons are being used for something bigger than you can see. It means that there's growth happening in the silence, in the waiting, in the heartbreak. It means that the detours and delays might actually be leading you exactly where you need to go. Think about the times in your life when things didn't go according to your plan. At the moment, maybe it felt like a disaster. Maybe you cried out in frustration, wondering why things had to turn out the way they did. But looking back, you can sometimes see the hand of purpose weaving through those moments. You can see how a closed door protected you, how a loss prepared you, how a setback humbled you and made you stronger. That hindsight gives us a glimpse of what trust really is. It's believing in the bigger picture before we can see the full canvas. And the truth is that higher purpose doesn't always reveal itself right away. Sometimes we go years before we understand the reason behind a season of our lives. Sometimes we never fully understand. But trust doesn't require full understanding. It requires surrender. It asks us to release the need to have all the answers and instead walk forward with courage, not because we know where we're going, but because we trust the one leading us knows. That kind of trust changes the way we pray. It moves us from give me what I want to give me what's right, from fix this now to shape me through this, from make it easy to make it meaningful, because when you begin to trust in a higher purpose, you stop needing comfort all the time. You start craving growth. You start seeking the deeper lessons, the eternal values, the things that last longer than quick fixes or temporary solutions. And in that trust, there's rest. You no longer feel the need to constantly prove yourself, to hustle for your worth, to live in fear of missing out on your destiny, because when you believe that your life has purpose, real purpose, then you also believe that nothing can steal that purpose from you. Not mistakes, not detours, not even failures. What is meant for you will come to you. What is meant to grow you will shape you. And what is meant to be yours cannot be taken by anyone else. This kind of trust also brings healing. When you believe there's a purpose in your pain, your suffering isn't just something to escape. It becomes something that transforms you. You begin to see your wounds not just as scars, but as symbols of survival. You begin to see your struggles not just as obstacles, but as stepping stones to something greater. You begin to realize that your story, every chapter, even the darkest ones, matters deeply. And when you live like that, with a heart anchored in trust, you become a light for others. Because people are drawn to those who radiate calm in the chaos. They see that you're not shaken by every change in circumstance, that you're not tossed by every storm, and they wonder why. And maybe, just maybe, your faith gives them the courage to believe too. So we keep walking, not because the road is smooth, but because the purpose is sure. We keep hoping, not because everything is easy, but because we know that everything is meaningful. We keep trusting, not because we see the end, but because we believe that every step we take is guided. And when that kind of trust fills our hearts, there is no room left for fear. There is no space for despair. Only peace, only purpose, only the quiet strength that comes from knowing we are exactly where we're meant to be. When you shift your perspective, you don't change your circumstances. You change how you see them, and that small shift changes everything. Life may still bring the same challenges, the same trials, the same interruptions to your plans, but you no longer look at them through the lens of fear or defeat. You begin to look at them with different eyes. Eyes that are trained to see not just the surface of a situation, but the deeper meaning within it. That shift doesn't always come easily. It takes discipline. It takes intention. It takes the willingness to step back from your emotional reactions and ask, what is this trying to teach me? Too often, we live as prisoners of our emotions, reacting to every difficulty as if it's an enemy, as if it's there to break us down. But what if it's there to build us up? What if every setback is a setup for growth? What if the very thing we're dreading could become the very thing that transforms us into who we were meant to be? When you shift your perspective, you stop seeing life as something happening to you and start seeing it as something happening for you. This shift begins with our thoughts. Our thoughts are the birthplace of our emotions and the foundation of our decisions. The thoughts we choose shape the world we live in. If we constantly feed our minds with fear, negativity, and doubt, we begin to see everything through that filter. A simple inconvenience becomes a disaster. A closed door becomes a rejection. A moment of waiting becomes a sentence of hopelessness. But if we train our minds to look for meaning, to choose gratitude over complaint, to look for possibility even in disappointment, then the very same moments take on a different light. Perspective doesn't deny the reality of pain, it redefines it. It says, yes, this hurts, yes, this is hard, but this isn't the end of the story. It gives us the power to stand in the middle of chaos and still choose peace. It reminds us that every storm runs out of rain. It reminds us that strength isn't found in everything going right. It's found in refusing to give up when everything's going wrong. There's something powerful about choosing your response. Life won't always give you options for what happens, but you always have a choice in how you respond. That's where your power lies. You may not control the storm, but you can control your sail. You may not escape the fire, but you can come through it refined. That's the essence of perspective, not pretending the fire doesn't exist, but believing that it can purify instead of destroy. When you shift your perspective, you stop asking why me, and start asking what now. You stop getting stuck in self-pity and start seeking purpose. You begin to view every challenge as an opportunity, not in a shallow, motivational way, but in a deep, grounded sense of hope. Because hope is not ignoring reality. It's believing that reality can still be redeemed. Even waiting becomes different when your perspective changes. Waiting can feel like punishment when you think your life is on pause. But if you believe that waiting is part of the process, then it becomes a place of preparation. It becomes a sacred space where character is shaped, patience is deepened, and trust is stretched. The delay you dread might be the very thing equipping you for what's next. The things you think are holding you back might actually be positioning you for something far beyond what you imagined. Shifting your perspective also changes how you see other people. Instead of judging them by their behavior, you begin to look deeper. You begin to see the pain behind the anger, the fear behind the pride, the story behind the silence. You become more patient, more compassionate, more understanding, because you recognize that everyone is fighting a battle you can't always see. And suddenly the world becomes a little softer, a little more human, a little more bearable. When your perspective shifts, even failure changes. Failure no longer defines you. It teaches you. You stop being afraid to try because you're no longer afraid to fail. You know that every attempt, every mistake, every stumble is part of the process. You stop tying your worth to outcomes and instead tie it to your effort, your courage, your willingness to keep showing up. That frees you. It lifts the weight of perfection and lets you live in the freedom of progress. Even your past begins to look different. You stop seeing it as a collection of mistakes and regrets, and you start seeing it as a classroom. Every scar becomes a lesson. Every wound becomes a chapter. You stop being ashamed of what you've been through, and you start recognizing how it shaped the person you are becoming. You stop hiding your story, and you start honoring it. Because you understand now, it was never meant to break you. It was meant to build you. Gratitude also becomes your natural response when your perspective shifts. Not because everything is perfect, but because you begin to see the good even in imperfection. You find beauty in the ordinary. You appreciate the small things. You start to see how much you've been given, even in seasons of lack. And that gratitude feeds your joy. It reminds you that life doesn't have to be pain, free to be beautiful. It just has to be seen with eyes willing to look deeper. And as your perspective shifts, you begin to live with more peace. Not because life is easy, but because your heart is settled. You stop living in reaction mode, constantly thrown around by circumstances, and instead live with a quiet confidence. You know that storms will come, but you also know that you're stronger than you used to be. You know that you might get knocked down, but you also know how to get back up. This kind of living doesn't happen by accident. It happens through daily choices. It happens by renewing your mind, by guarding your thoughts, by choosing hope over fear, truth over lies, and faith over doubt. It happens when you stop feeding your fears and start feeding your trust. It happens when you stop obsessing over what you can't control and start stewarding what you can. You don't need perfect conditions to find peace. You just need a new perspective. You just need to see your life not through the lens of fear or failure, but through the lens of purpose and growth. You begin to realize that no moment is wasted, no trial is meaningless, and no tear is forgotten. Everything you're walking through is shaping you, strengthening you, preparing you. And when you start to live with that kind of perspective, you walk through life not as a victim of your circumstances, but as a victor in the midst of them. There's something deeply comforting in knowing that you are not alone. No matter how strong you are, no matter how capable or independent, every human heart longs to feel that kind of assurance, that quiet confidence that someone is walking beside you, watching over you, guiding your steps. Because when life gets heavy, when it breaks down all your plans and hits you with waves you never saw coming, that's when loneliness tries to creep in. It tells you you're forgotten. It whispers that no one understands, no one cares, and no one is coming to help. But that's not the truth. The truth is, even when you feel isolated, even when you're walking through a valley so dark that you can't see the next step in front of you, you are not alone. There's a presence that walks with you through every season, through the triumphs and the trials, through the days when everything makes sense, and through the nights when nothing does. You may not always feel it. You may not always recognize it, but that doesn't make it any less real. Just because the sky is covered in clouds doesn't mean the sun is gone. Just because you can't see the path clearly doesn't mean the journey is without direction. So many people go through life believing they have to carry it all. They walk through pain in silence, they hide their fears behind smiles, and they carry burdens too heavy for one soul to bear. But the weight was never meant to be carried alone. You were created for connection, for community, for companionship, not only with people, but with a presence greater than yourself. When you start to understand that, something begins to shift. You start to breathe easier. You start to let go of the shame that tells you you're weak for needing help. You begin to understand that needing help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human, and here's what happens when you embrace that truth. You stop trying to be your own savior. You stop putting pressure on yourself to have all the answers, to figure everything out, to always be strong. You learn to lean, not because you're collapsing, but because you're finally trusting that you're not walking through this alone. That kind of leaning isn't defeat, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that no matter how capable you are, you were never meant to navigate life without guidance. In those moments of stillness, when the noise of the world dies down and the demands fade, you can begin to feel that gentle assurance. It's in the quiet moments that the presence becomes clearest. When everything around you is uncertain and your heart is beating fast with fear, that's when the still, small whisper reminds you, I'm here. And once you've heard that, once you've felt that even if only for a moment, you're never quite the same again, because that kind of love, that kind of presence, stays with you. It doesn't disappear when you fail. It doesn't withdraw when you fall apart. It doesn't judge you when you have doubts or when your faith shakes. It's there through the questions. It's there through the anger. It's there through the heartbreak. Because real love doesn't run, real love stays, and the presence that walks with you is love itself. That's why you can walk into uncertain situations and still have peace. Not because the situation is safe, but because you're not facing it alone. You can go through seasons of grief and still find moments of joy, not because the grief is gone, but because you're being carried through it. You can face decisions that terrify you, moments that stretch you beyond what you thought you could handle, and still stand strong, not because you have all the answers, but because you trust the one who does. And as you begin to live with that awareness, it changes the way you see everything. You start to notice that you're being guided in ways you didn't even recognize at first. You look back and see that some of the things you thought were coincidences were actually divine setups. You realize that the door that didn't open was a form of protection, that the relationship that ended was the start of your healing, that the delay you resented was actually preparation for something better. It's in that hindsight that your faith deepens. You start to look at the road behind you and see footprints beside yours, moments when you were carried, times when your strength failed but you didn't fall. You realize that even in the most painful moments, you were never abandoned. And if you were never alone back then, you won't be alone now. This understanding also frees you to be more present with others. When you know you're not walking through life alone, you stop living in survival mode. You stop operating from a place of scarcity, and you start living from a place of abundance. You're not so overwhelmed trying to carry your own load that you can't help others with theirs. You begin to offer presence to others not because you're perfect, but because you know how powerful it is just to show up, to say you're not alone, and really mean it because you've lived it. And in that community, in that shared presence, healing multiplies. Grace deepens. Faith grows. When people come together, when they walk with each other through the highs and the lows, something sacred happens. You realize that even when you feel weak, someone else is standing with you. Even when your hope is flickering, someone else is holding a light. That's the beauty of not being alone. It doesn't just give you strength, it gives you the strength to strengthen others. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are seen, known, and guided. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to beg to be noticed. You are already known more deeply than you can understand, and that knowledge, that foundation, gives you the freedom to stop striving. To stop performing, to stop pretending. You can show up as you are broken, healing, growing, and still be met with love. Even in your mistakes, even in your moments of regret, you are not alone. You are not disqualified. You are not beyond redemption. The presence walking with you is not conditional. It doesn't depend on your performance. It's not limited by your past. It's there in your darkest hour, and it's there in your brightest one. It's not just walking beside you. It's going before you, preparing the way. It's behind you, covering your past. It's within you, giving you peace that the world can't explain. So wherever you are, however far you feel, however lost or uncertain or weary, remember that you are not walking through this life alone. You are seen, you are loved, and you are being led step by step through every season, through every valley, into the purpose that was always meant for you.